My name is Damien, the tall, friendly atheist dad, host of the Tall, Friendly Atheist Dad podcast. Wherever you are, whatever time of day it is, whatever you happen to be doing, whatever you happen to be not doing, whoever you happen to be with, and whatever speed you happen to be traveling at. Yes, this is part 9 of An Atheist Reads Why I Hate Religion by Creflo. Hit the music. Hello, yes. So, playing right now is a video titled Walking Around Johor City Centre by Aaron Walks, and I'm going to give him a like. There you go. So, Johor is literally across the strait. So there's a little body of water that is that separates Singapore from Malaysia. And yeah, so when you take the bus from Singapore to get to Malaysia, you will encounter Johor Bahru. I don't know what a Johor is, but yeah, I was going to go this time round when I went to Singapore a few weeks ago, but I suffered an injury which kept me home for a day. And the previous time I went to JB, as it's affectionately called, was about 10 or so years ago, and they had the best chicken chop I ever had. So yeah. Yeah. So anyway, you can watch this as I prattle on about Creflo. Creflo's book, Why I Hate Religion. Yeah. And I'll say this again, I find it highly ironic that a minister of religion is criticizing religion. So anyway, that's let me just make sure I've got but that's fine, cool. I had a bookmark and I didn't make sure the bookmark was so anyway, yeah, this is check out the previous 8 moments in the series. If you like him, you like him. You don't. Sorry if you do or don't, but it's I would like if you did like it though. Anyway, so currently in the chapter, what chapter am I in? Jeez, it's gonna be fun. I'm in the chapter Reason 7. Religion makes people try to earn their way into heaven. So there you go. That's if you have the book, read along. If not, you have to put up with me. So anyway, I'm going to start reading in 3, 2, 1. Sorry, do it again. And my son is behind me eating food and doing homework, so this is all entertainment for him. Okay. If you condemn yourself and continue to say, I'm not worthy or perfect enough to hear from the Lord, you disqualify yourself from being used. Do you have to be flawless in order for God to use you? No. If you take advantage of the blood that was shed by Jesus and stand with confidence in your righteousness, He will. Do you have to be flawless in order for God to use you? No. So you sinned. Now what? most people start to wallow in a pity party and feel guilty for what they did. Don't even go there. Right in the midst of your situation, before your pity party starts, begin to thank the Lord for his forgiveness. Say, thank you, Jesus, for being here for me. Through you, I'm saved, and I have the grace of God to be forgiven. I'm telling you that by the time you finish bringing the issue to God, he will be speaking to you. Instead of people getting back in God's presence to hear his answers, the body of Christ wants to get God through their good works. Understand that you can never be good enough, work hard enough, or do enough charity work to get into heaven. You must go through Jesus. He's the only way to the Father. This revelation didn't come to me right away. Like others who grew up in the church, I thought good deeds were the key to getting into heaven. Then one day, I realized that wasn't right, and that it wasn't biblical. I thought to myself, as I work hard to be flawless and perfect, my righteousness isn't dependent upon my actions. Because even if I were perfect, without Jesus, I still wouldn't be good enough. I'm not righteous without him. I can't hear without him. My faith can't work without him. That's why it's nonsense for people to think they can earn their way to heaven through good works. Everything is based on your acceptance of Jesus. All right, so interesting. So that ends the section. I forget what section it is. Let me see what section it is. The Sea of Forgetfulness. All right, cool. So, and I'm going to hit some tunes from one of my favorite bands, Victim of Illusion, from their album Invisible Light. Head on over to victimofillusion.bandcamp.com and pick up this album for a very reasonable price and help support independent music artists. So yeah, anyway, this is an interesting theology, and maybe one that sounds good when you're writing a book and you're trying to give people pep talks to make them feel better. But when it comes to the crunch, there's just not much to how can I say, one of the things, it's one of those things that people say but don't really put in practice. Because so in my experience, so I grew up in a church that would how can I say, that was, they weren't prosperity preachers, but they were definitely modern non-denominationals, who would have loved this kind of feel good words, and you don't have to be good enough, and as long as you come to the Lord and all that kind of stuff. But I can guarantee though that if there were some particular sins that you may or may not be guilty of, or if the leadership found a reason to not trust you, that they would definitely use that against you. I remember one time when I was a believer that I went to the front for prayer after a service, and then I was prayed, and then I was slain in the spirit, which is when you fall down and if you feel like you can't stand anymore. Then I got up, and there was a person next to me, and I started praying with/for the person next to me. And then my pastor came and said, "Hey, Damien, please don't pray for that person because you were just prayed for. We don't feel it's wise that you then pray for someone else." then it's like, okay, that's a very novel, very novel theology. It's yeah. So even though well, at the time I believed that Jesus was doing something in me to help me, yeah, it was. Yeah, how can I say? It just wasn't. There are certain rules and restrictions about how God could work, and yeah, what you were and weren't allowed to do, depending how it looked. And this is the thing. Yeah, particularly my church, looks were looks were a bit of a thing. You had to look and say and do the right things, and yeah. The other thing in my previous church was that um, it's very rare that people who disagreed with the pastor were promoted. Almost always, the people who were promoted in my church were people who agreed with the pastor and who were sycophantic yes men or yes women. There's a topic to talk about. So yeah, so this whole idea that after you sin, that all you need to do is be go to Jesus and you have your take advantage of the blood that was shed by Jesus and stand with confidence in your righteousness. And it's like, well, as I said, it sounds good, but in practice, what does standing confidence in righteousness actually mean? It's just like I think as long as you pretend that you don't have anything on your conscience and you give the appearance of being of being so I'm just gonna adjust just that there. Yeah, as long as you give the appearance that you are clean and not doing anything egregiously wrong, then yeah, that's a. And it's interesting. Just on that, the name Ted Haggard may ring a bell. About 10 years ago, he was caught in a scandal in his church, and he had to step down from numerous high profile positions. And it turns out that the other week, more allegations were made about him that echoed the allegations made from 10 years ago in his new church. It's interesting. So I find it interesting that a creep like Ted Haggard can still hold high level leadership positions, but poor old me, who was just prayed for, can't pray with someone else. And it's like, yeah, great. So next is this part here. So you sinned. Now what? Most people start to roll on a pity party and feel guilty for what they did. Well, it's I don't know. Maybe a pity party is how you show contrition to someone that you're, yeah. But the problem is that you're not really having a relationship with a human in this. You're having a relationship with a demigod. And the problem is that demigod is all in your head. And yeah, actually, and this will be a throwback to my old Fundy days. But yeah, the whole thing about in my church, and this is probably one of the reasons I ended up walking away from faith, was because my faith had to be someone else's faith. My walk with the Lord wasn't really mine. It had to go through my pastor. So basically, my pastor was filtering anything between me and God, or what I thought was God. And yeah, so in the end, and I was in the system for about good 5 or something years, which so may not be a long time in the scheme of things, but even now, yeah, sorry, you can yeah, sorry. Even now, I've been an atheist for getting towards 10 years. I still carry that baggage with me. Yeah, so it is toxic. But yeah, again, this the question I have to ask is how do you know? How do you independently verify that you have been cleansed and forgiven and all that? And the problem is if it just goes down by how you feel, then what's the thing we get into conversations with Twitter Christians? Oh, your conscience is your God-given guide to something or other. Then I bring up the question, well, conscience. We know conscience is is something shaped by culture. In the antebellum South, those pastors who were advocating for slavery, I'm sure their conscience didn't, didn't have any problems, or people who smoke. People who smoke don't seem to have many problems on their conscience about smoking. So is smoking, an evil thing or not? And it's a bit of a all those things, and it just seems that God hates who you hate, and God hates what you hate, and you hate what God hates, and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, I'm going to go on to the next part of this chapter, and this is actually the last section of the chapter, and it's headed "Good without God doesn't add up." So 3, 2, 1. Okay. Have you ever heard the argument from a person who says, "I'm a good person at heart. I don't drink alcohol, smoke, or take illegal drugs. I'm kind to others. So why do I need to know Jesus?" People who say that are generally law-abiding citizens with what the world considers good morals. They think that their many gifts of time and money given to charitable organizations and good causes make them good enough to go to heaven, despite the fact that they haven't accepted Jesus as their Lord and Saviour. They are in for a rude awakening when they reach hell and realise that they had been living a lie. This type of thinking isn't limited to the world either. There are those who have gone to church all of their lives, yet have not accepted Christ. They feel their place in heaven is secured because they are faithful in the choir or have served in the church for 20 years. These kinds of people work their fingers to the bone in ministry positions and do good works in the community, but don't realise that it's all in vain if they don't invite Jesus into their hearts. People must realise that being good without God doesn't equal going to heaven. God must be behind everything that you do. He must be your motivator. All right, that's interesting piece of theology there. And I just got my eyes on this video from Jehovah Baru. And one thing I can tell you now already is that this place is way dirtier than Singapore. In Singapore is probably one of the cleanest countries in the world. And I'm just see the streets here and all that, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's no way that something in Singapore would be so run down. So anyway, so onto the book at hand. Now this is interesting. The other week, I got into a debate with a friend on Twitter, and it came around, conscience and all that, and I said, by your theology, will I go to heaven when I die? Why not? And the answer he said, I would put bets on you going to heaven when you die. And he basically made the argument that I'm a good person, and that I'm not evil or a reprobate or anything like that. That's right, because we got into the discussion of if a child dies before they get to know Jesus, do they go to heaven or hell? And in the fundamentalist interpretations of the Bible, anyone who hasn't accepted Jesus, goes down, and you can only go up if you accept Jesus. Then there were people into discussion with said, no, if that child died, then that child goes straight to heaven. And so then I said, well, is it then possible to go to heaven without Jesus? And they said yes, because if you've been honest about what you in your heart and all that kind of something like that. And so that's a very, very interesting theology. So what Creflo Dollar says here kind of strikes at a video, also a podcast that I made that I haven't released yet as of recording, where I make the point. Oh, so we're talking about no true. I was talking about No True Christian, and I said that if you play No True Christian, then there's no difference between a true Christian and a moral atheist. And yeah, I'm one of these people who I don't drink. Well, I rarely drink, maybe once or twice a year. I don't smoke and I don't take illegal drugs. All the drugs I take are legal. I'm kind to others. So why do I need to know Jesus? And just the answer that pops in my head is that I'm still infected with an unseen curse that has unseen symptoms, and we have no verification of if that curse has been taken. Jesus died to take away a curse that doesn't get taken away, because you still suffer the effects of the curse even though the curse has been taken away. And that makes no sense whatsoever. It's sort of like we could hook someone up to an echocardiogram, and let's say we're hooking an atheist up to an echocardiogram and get them to accept Jesus. Will that ECG stop at the moment they accept Jesus? Or it's not like atheists and Christians are made up of different atoms or different molecular structure or anything like that. It's because then you get people who argue that atheists don't have feelings, they're immoral, they're wicked people. Well, no, some are, yes, but on the whole, we are just regular people who live regular, ordinary lives. There's no need to. So why do I need to know Jesus? Well, because there's still this idea of an unseen, unknowable, unconceivable curse that is undetectable, and I just don't. Yeah, and no one can explain how they know this curse gets removed, who's affected by this curse, all this kind of stuff. However, I would say I will agree with Pastor Dolly here in that there are people who think that they earn their way into heaven, who think that by I should say earn their way into heaven, but think they have right standing with God, and their long service in the church gives them a sense of moral superiority. That's probably what I'll say, because I've noticed that people who have been in the church for, particularly the more fundamentalists, you are, the more crabby and the more it's like, I can't say I've probably only met maybe one or two 6-day creationists who aren't crabby, jaded, antipathic people. Like they will put the smile on and go, "Hey, good to see you." But then once you start challenging their ideas, they get all narky and start showing their disdain for you. There's probably only one or two people I know who aren't like that. And so. But people who are, I've been in church for 20 years, that means I'm automatically conferred the righteousness of the creator of the universe. So, well, come on, you need to do better than that. I'm not a servant of the creator of the universe, and I still treat people with respect, Sorry to interrupt, but I'm looking at that body of water just below the statue, and in Singapore, there was no way that would look as filthy as that. And that body of water just over there as well. Hey, boy, can you see that just there on the screen? Yes, I know. You see how yucky it is? Yeah, so, like, this is in Malaysia. This is just over the causeway from Singapore, and there's I'm looking at that. And there's no way that would happen in Singapore. So so Malaysia is a very, very different country, for better or worse. So anyway, let's go back to the book. So that's my rambling for that. So 3, 2, 1. According to a 2000 Barna Research Group survey, 57% of all adults and 3 out of 5 teens, 60%, who don't attend church believe that if a person is generally good or does enough good things for others during his or her life, that person will earn a place in heaven. In addition, a study by the same group in 2004 found that more than half of all adults, saved and unsaved, also agree with that statement. This is a sad statistic. So many people have been deceived by wrong religious teachings. The church must rid itself of all traces of religion and get busy spreading the truth of salvation and the gospel of grace if these people are ever going to be free from bondage. There. Just as I was reading that, the idea that so he's talking about the idea of not being a good person for the sake of going to heaven. But the problem is that is one way your faith is measured, by how much of a good person you are. And it's like, well, is hell only for scumbags? Because if hell is only for scumbags, well, sorry, if hell isn't only for scumbags, then there will be good, kind-hearted, generous people in hell. It's like, well, what have we got to worry about then? And if creepy priests and creepy pastors and creepy creepy church leaders can get into heaven, then so if kind-hearted people go to hell and creepy people get to heaven, then why this emphasis on being a good person? It sort of seems that in Christianity, being a good person won't get into heaven, but you need to be a good person anyway. Otherwise, you don't show that you're going to heaven, or you don't have your guarantee of salvation, or you're sinning if you're not a good person. So I don't quite get what the difference between a good person and a saved person is. And given that you may have seen the bumper sticker, I'm not perfect, just forgiven. Yeah, I see that one a fair bit, and it's like, well, sure, you can be forgiven, but that doesn't mean if you still treat your fellow person like crap, then hey, guess what? You can treat your fellow person like crap. Whereas someone like an atheist who apparently has no grounding or foundation for their morals, it's like, even I can treat people better than people who are supposedly saved and in touch with the creator of the universe. Yes, it is just interesting. And he says, what is the gospel of grace? The problem, though, is that the gospel of grace, when taken more and more literally, ends up being a religion anyway. Sort of like, well, hey, you got to come to church every Sunday. You got to wear you should wear your nice suit. God wants you to give 10% of your income to Him. Don't smoke, don't drink, don't do drugs, don't get with people that you aren't married to, and make sure they're not of the same gender as you. All that kind of stuff. So the problem, though, is that the initial entry is not type share. In the initial entry, the presentation is free. Then, if you want to get more into it, it then starts to turn into a religion. It's a little bit like it's a bit like I was going to say, it's like self-employment. When you get those okay, it's like when you get those work from home office that says, do you want to be your own boss? Do you want to keep working do the same 9 to 5 for 15 years, not getting anywhere? Then take advantage of this wonderful opportunity. And it turns out that wonderful opportunity is even more hard work, more dodgy, and than actual employment work. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to stop the reading there. Let me just highlight that. Let me chuck a bookmark in there. Beautiful. So in part 10, we'll finish up the section called Good Without God Doesn't Add Up. And then we'll start on the next section, next chapter, which is titled Reason Number 6, Religion Promotes the Idea that God uses calamity to teach people. Oh boy, man, I can't wait to do that one. But anyway, I've been Damien, this friendly atheist dad. This is the Tall Friendly Atheist Dad podcast. If you check out the details at the crawl at the bottom of the screen, you can contact me, listen to the podcast, get in touch with me, criticize me, congratulate me, or do none of the above. Till next time, see ya.